Tonight, as the polling finally comes to an end in West Bengal, we bring you a special broadcast here. Our main focus will remain the COVID cases across the country. We will discuss this massive surge in few of the states where these campaigns and rallies were held. For over a month and a half now, we've been talking about how there has been blatant, brazen disregard for COVID norms at rally after rally, roadshow after roadshow. But all our voices went unheard, with the Election Commission not doing anything about it and netas not caring at all. All they did was give us excuses that what can we do? It's election time, we have to hold these rallies. Some even went ahead and told us, well, the cases are actually surging in states like Maharashtra and Delhi where there are no elections. It's not a problem in states like Bengal and Assam as of now. Tonight we're going to tell you how it has become a problem, and a large part of it will have to be linked and seen in context to the massive gatherings that we saw. Even as in parts of Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Assam, Kerala, rest of the country, we saw people queuing up to get themselves tested, struggling for beds, struggling for oxygen. We've had these rallies continue. It's been a really, really sad state of affairs where votes somehow seem to have mattered more. So we continue with the spotlight on COVID. As I say good evening to our managing editor, Vinay Tiwari, who's going to be with me in this special broadcast. In about an hour from now, we will give you the numbers of what various pollsters are suggesting. We will find out whether it was all worth it and which parties are actually going to win this election in the middle of a pandemic. But Vinay, before I come to you, I want to start off with some interesting numbers that we've pulled out for Bengal. We're going to put the spotlight on Bengal first, and Aarti is standing by with some interesting data. Aarti, many would say, oh, you know what, when elections were announced, situation wasn't so bad anywhere, so what could we have done? But progressively, situation did become worse, even in the poll states.
Well, Tanvi, you know, the people who objected to the 8-phase poll elections, it wasn't as much about COVID as the fact that perhaps, you know, electorally we might not do well if it was 8 phases or if it was 3 phases, 4 phases. That was the only thing that mattered when the actual, you know, election campaign was announced. It didn't matter that there was a pandemic. It didn't matter that people's lives were at stake. All that mattered was political expediency, and that shows in these numbers. Let me just take you through them, because this will tell you a story in itself about how the numbers just shot up in that election period. To start off with, February 26, just on the eve of the announcement of the polls, there were 189 cases per day in West Bengal. This is the weekly average of the number of cases. Progressively, as you can see, it has been increasing. On March 15th, it was 251. On April 1st, it was 829. On April 15th, 4,868. On April 20th, 14,942. That's nearly 15,000 cases. Just in a period of about a month and a half, the cases have just shot up. And of course, they would have. Anybody in their right mind would have known that with these massive rallies, with zero social distancing, with zero, to be honest, we've not even seen candidates wear a mask. Of course, these numbers would have shot up, and that is what has happened. And we actually don't even know, and this is something that we need to tell our viewers, we don't know if the numbers are even higher than this, because the data and the information coming in from West Bengal has been almost a trickle. Let's look at the positivity rate in West Bengal. Positivity rate is essentially, per 100 people, how many have actually tested positive. Again, you see from the date that the elections were announced, there has been a massive increase. On the 26th of February, it was about 1%. From then to the 28th of April, where we are at, it's 27.9%. That's 28% effectively. That has been the increase since the announcement of the elections. Once again, it's been an explosion of cases in West Bengal, and it's something that has not occurred to any political party at all during their rallies. In the last two phases, suddenly all of them have woken up and said, look, we're in the middle of a pandemic, perhaps we should reduce the number of people in our rallies. But all through the month of April, when these cases were rising, nobody cared, and this is what they have to show for, this is what they have to account for. 30% of positivity rate in West Bengal because of the sheer abdication of responsibility by all political parties in West Bengal.
And that also, Aarti, in whatever limited kind of testing is really taking place, on whatever numbers officially the state is giving us, we know that a situation on ground, in fact, when it has been worse than what these numbers show. The testing labs are already running out of kits. The hospitals in cities like Kolkata, even before polling was held there, were completely full, beds completely full. And before we have a deeper conversation about it, let's also get you a ground reality, matching with these numbers. Tanima, who's been in that state tracking COVID and elections for us, is joining me right now. Tanima, and wherever you went in those rallies, nobody really seemed to care about COVID. It's as if it didn't exist for any of those who were campaigning.
That's right, and if I recall, I only heard once, literally once, by an announcement being made by Mamata Banerjee on one of her public meets right towards the end when she was in Jadavpur, where she asked people at the particular ground where we were at to mask up. But this is not just about Mamata Banerjee. All the political leaders that we actually saw campaigning during this entire month and over than that, a period of time, most of them, by example, were not leading from the front. We saw them not wearing masks or maintaining COVID protocols while they were addressing rallies or when they were giving interviews. And remember, of course, most of these rallies and public meetings were big-ticket events, wherever the Chief Minister went herself or even otherwise. So many star campaigners that we saw coming in from outside for the BJP, addressing big rallies in big grounds. Right from the first rally that I attended, there was absolutely no COVID protocol which was maintained in any of them. It was right towards the end, as you said, that they decided to hold virtual rallies on a couple of occasions for the last two phases. But by that time, of course, the numbers had already exploded in small towns as well. In Bengal, I have been speaking to the people involved in the healthcare infrastructure here, and they are saying over there testing is hardly present. But even then, the hospitals over there have also started getting a number of COVID cases. So those are, of course, numbers which are probably not going to crop up too much on the Bengal government data, because as Aarti was mentioning, that data in itself in Bengal is just trickling in. But coming back to the campaigns that I saw, remember, Bengal also has a lot of stars who have in fact been given tickets by both parties, BJP and TMC, and for them the star value also is to go out on the streets and campaign by showing their faces. In fact, it's very interesting, some of them have also given interviews by saying that even when they were trying to wear masks while doing road shows, they were told by party workers to take off the mask for that period of time, because people would be attracted coming to the streets they want to see a star coming out for the road show, according to the party workers. So that was the excuse being given by some of these star candidates who had been fielded both by the TMC and the BJP. So instead of, again, leading from the front, they were actually seen without wearing masks. But that's not just them. As I said, even the biggest of the leaders from all these parties have been seen doing just that. And what we can, in fact, see is that the numbers have now exploded in Kolkata and the surrounding districts around Kolkata, the greater Kolkata region as we know it. And but as I said, testing still remains quite abysmal. I've been speaking to doctors throughout these past few weeks, and they say that there are several other districts which are worrying areas like Murshidabad and Birbhum, where testing is hardly present at all.
And some of those rules, I'm going to talk about those as well in just a bit, that EC has now come up with. They're as non-implementable, non-practical as their rules were for campaigning, which obviously didn't work on ground. Tanima, thanks so much for joining us and really bringing us the ground picture as well, Vinay. It was impractical to begin with to say we're going to limit people in rallies and we're going to ask everybody to wear masks. We're going to limit people who go for door-to-door campaigning. None of that was actually followed.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just impractical, it is absolutely stupid to imagine that that can be even made possible. That is part one. Part two, I am absolutely astounded at how suddenly our leaders forgot, and right from the Prime Minister downwards. I mean, Mr. Modi himself, while campaigning, was not wearing the mask on many occasions. Mr. Amit Shah was not wearing the mask when he was doing road shows. We have, campaigns after campaign visuals which suggest that. And you had the party president, Mr. Nadda, all of them. The issue is not whether they were vulnerable or not. The issue is it sends a message. These are leaders who people watch and they follow, and they are adored or liked or revered or whatever word you want to use. But the fact of the matter is that there is a salutary effect that leaders have when they do things themselves. And I give the example of something which happened, say, in the previous innings. When the Prime Minister himself picked up the broom and started what was a Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the whole country followed. Because that sends a message that this is a serious issue, and if I can do it, so can you. And I think that's where we missed a trick. We should have done that more openly. We should have curtailed the rallies. This whole concept of having mega rallies, 5 lakh, 10 lakh people in the middle of what now we are discovering is possibly the worst crisis that has ever hit us, was absolutely ridiculous. And the Election Commission, except for issuing notional orders, which nobody was following, and I think we have a list of those instructions that they were issuing, which were absolutely not getting followed anywhere. Even just as late as 2 days ago in Warangal in the by-election, you had a packed street full of 20,000 people for a by-election. All parties again campaigning there. So, I mean, I am amazed that we are so unscientific in our thoughts that we believe that viruses respect geographical boundaries or state boundaries. They don't. And once numbers start multiplying, the next multiple is going to be that much quicker than the previous one. So when you had 189 cases, which we showed on February 26th, the more it multiplies, the quicker and faster the growth of the virus is going to be. That's how it works. The virus looks for carriers which are not, bodies which are not carriers, and goes and infects them. That's how it works. And I don't think a country like India, which is a modern economy, a developing country, in the year 2021 should have shown such an unscientific temper to handling a crisis of this sort.
Not even one clear, credible case of action being taken. Nobody was penalized, only warnings after warnings issued, which meant nothing. I think it didn't mean anything for Election Commission. It didn't mean anything for the people who were attending these rallies. Obviously, it didn't mean anything for either the candidates or their star campaigners. Star campaigners, right up to the Prime Minister, in fact, were very glad to see large crowds, and even mentioned the fact that it was good to see people come out in huge numbers. That's not the kind of messaging one would have hoped and expected from our top leaders. But when it comes to election, I think it's just simply about trying to get as many votes and meeting and reaching out to people. Let me say good evening also to Mr. Javed Ansari, senior journalist joining us right now, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, author and a senior journalist, Deshratan Nigam, advocate for the Supreme Court and an RSS supporter, and T.S. Sudhir, political analyst, joining us this evening. Mr. Nilanjan, I want to start off with you, because just like Tanima, you've also been, in Bengal, you've been seeing what's been going on ground. Would you agree that everybody simply just assumed that COVID wasn't even a topic to consider?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Right from the beginning, after the elections were announced, what happened was that the Election Commission had issued a set of guidelines way back in August 2020. And then they decided that that is going to be the final order that they have to do, and they're not going to look beyond that. But the situation has changed completely since then. The basic problem is that right from the beginning, it has been very clear to everybody that while it was important to ensure that the health of the people remained safe, that they remain very fine, it's also equally important in a democracy that the health of democracy is also maintained. This can happen only through periodic elections when they were held. Initially, India was not among those countries, which pushed back the elections. It was very good, barring for 1 or 2 elections in the Rajya Sabha. We stuck to the plan, we stuck in Bihar. But I think, Bihar, even though we got evidence that there were some negative effects of the COVID pandemic, they did not learn any messages, any lessons from Bihar. So as a result of which, the entire sense of complacency which was there, in February we were declaring that India had scored a victory over the virus. So that mood prevailed in the Election Commission, and they felt that this could be a normal election. But when things started going abnormal, they were not caught. They were caught on the wrong footing. They had no plan B. Whereas out here, we not only had the need to have a plan B, but also for a plan C. So none of this worked, as a result of which this became such a huge crisis. Even then, towards the end, Mamata Banerjee had suggested that the last three phases should be clubbed together. A former election commissioner, Mr. S.Y. Qureshi, I remember, saying that it could be done, but the election commission was unwilling to do it. So you can always hide behind a huge bureaucratic web. But the point is that where is your responsibility? The election commission is responsible for the health of the people and for the health of the democracy. And it failed on both counts.
You're right, and in fact, we had also spoken to Mr. S.Y. Qureshi at that time. He quoted the rules to us and he said, well, the only legal hurdle, the rule that has to be kept in mind is the fact that the candidate needs to be given those 14 days of campaigning. But at that time, when we did the math, there was enough time to even ensure that everybody gets those days for campaigning as per plan, and you can still club it together. You just had to move the days to the last date, which would have been today, and ensure that at least in between you don't allow too much of activity on ground. But that didn't take place, Mr. Javed Ansari. The Election Commission, in fact, took its own sweet time, waited for many, many days before they even responded to the TMC's request of combining the phases. By then, of course, it was too late, even as per rules.
Yes, and if there is one body, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so if there is one body, one constitutional body which has come out looking really bad, it's the Election Commission. Look, extraordinary situations call for extraordinary measures. Yes, we all understand that it's very important to hold elections, but not at the cost of people's lives. And what is the kind of messaging that has gone about? You have a health minister who says that we are at the end game, that corona is at its end game and we've mastered it. You have a prime minister who brags before the world, who mocks at the world, saying that you were prophets of doom, you were predicting that India is going to be in a very bad shape, and we've mastered it. You have the second most powerful man in Assam, Mr. Hemanta Biswa Sarma, saying that there is no correlation between crowds and this pandemic and corona. And then you have all our political leaders who've been addressing massive rallies, holding road shows without even making a effort to cover their mouths, cover their faces. So what's the cue that people are going to take? We just became extremely complacent. We just somehow, in a very strange manner, managed to convince ourselves that this pandemic had gone away. We wished away this pandemic. We took our eye off the ball, and now we are faced with disastrous consequences. People are paying with their lives. And like Atif Tashid said, what can be a more pitiable comment on this country that the sick are dying to get into hospitals and those who are dead are dying to get into cemeteries, and they're both failing. So just look at the situation where we've landed up. It's just a case of wrong priorities. It's not just enough a tough leader is not just one who talks tough. He takes tough decisions. He's sometime who stands against popular mood. I would have been proud of my Prime Minister if he had taken a public stand saying there will be no religious congregations, irrespective of which cutting across religious denominations. I would have been very proud of my Prime Minister if he had told the Election Commission that, look, this is my personal opinion, I can't direct you, but I do feel that this is not the right time. On both accounts, he failed, Government of India failed, and all of us are now paying the price with our lives.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to understand, Mr. Deshratan Nigam, why? What was the insistence to continue with the pending polls? Constitutionally, legally, was there a challenge to postpone the pending, at least in April, when you see what's going on, to continue denying it and saying, oh no, it's only happening in one part of the country, it will never reach West Bengal?
Tanvi, one thing is very clear. We know that it's a pandemic, epidemic or Mahamari. And the second wave hit us suddenly. In fact, when the second wave hit in the Western countries, it was slow. It was not as sudden. So nobody knew about the behavior of the virus. The virus has behaved absolutely differently till about a month back. Everything was all right. Yes, our system is overloaded, but it is holding up. None of the hospitals have shut down, or the doctors have retreated. Everybody is holding the ground, but nobody can deny the devastating effect of the virus this time. And therefore, so far as polls are concerned, the Election Commission, I am sure, did consider it based on the data that was available at that point of time, not the data that we have now. And because of the sudden, behavior of the virus this time, I don't think this could have been predicted by anybody. So I am not an expert, neither the people sitting on the panel.
Yeah.
And the entire workforce from the defense forces to the government of India is right on the job working. All the states government are also working. Yes, there have been failures, there is no doubt, and some mismanagement is also being seen. But at the end of the day, I think we must understand we have no reference point. My generation or my father's generation or the younger generation had not seen this pandemic. And therefore, we don't have a referral point, and hence we are comparing it in isolation. Pandemics do leave devastating effects. Its effects have to be mitigated, whether it was the Western world or the other world. And we all have to be very positive at this stage. It is very easy to, criticize, but at the same time, we must bring out positive stories from the society and how the society as a large has risen up. Yes, the government is doing its work. All the state governments are also putting all their effort. But the society as a large, the private organizations, the people have risen to the occasion and are working very hard.
Yes,
so
but
we
why?
Must also, bring out those
Mr.
positive
Nigam, and we are doing that.
stories.
We are bringing out the stories of people who are helping people. But we cannot let those whose job it is to do that, we can't let them off the hook. You say this came suddenly. I say, well, you didn't hear what the experts had been saying for a while. I don't think anybody in the Election Commission even consulted with a medical expert to understand what could possibly come our way. We can't say this changed only in 1 month. We didn't bother to check before that. The testing numbers in all poll states dropped from their peak. From 6 months ago to what we saw in the month of February, they dropped. We put our guard down, and so we said, oh, there is no COVID, because we weren't checking for COVID, because we didn't listen to the experts who were saying there will be a second wave at this point of time. The world over there has been a second wave. And when the wave hit us, that's the most concerning part. We acted like it's still not a problem and we can control it. Mr. T.S. Sudhir, look at the example of Tamil Nadu. We pushed and pushed and pushed till 6th of April. We continued to be in denial, and on 8th of April, we came crashing down onto the people with restrictions, curbs and curfews. It took 2 days for the story to change after their vote had been cast.
Absolutely, and that is going to be the biggest challenge now, given the fact that the governments now in Kerala or in Tamil Nadu, it is essentially a government which is just holding fort till the election results are announced on the 2nd of May. So in that sense, whichever government actually comes to power on the 2nd of May, whichever party comes to power, it has to hit the ground running immediately. The situation is definitely not good in either Kerala or Tamil Nadu, but definitely not as serious or as grim as in Maharashtra or Delhi. But the situation could take a turn for the worse. Yes, the authorities, the Chennai Municipal Corporation in particular, doing very good work. But given the fact that the system can actually take only that much load, and that is going to be extremely serious. We have been discussing about the role of the Election Commission. The impression that I get is that the Election Commission has been living in a bio bubble of its own, completely oblivious to what the situation on the ground is. Yes, when the entire schedule was announced and an 8-phase poll was announced for Bengal, probably they were not aware of the fact of the situation on the ground as far as the second wave is concerned. But if 234 constituencies in Tamil Nadu, 30 in Puducherry, 140 in Kerala can vote on one single day, was there really the need to go in for an 8-phase poll in Bengal? And when the second wave hit, and there were parties like the Trinamool Congress writing to the Election Commission saying that please bunch the faces together, you got to think out of the box, because we are facing an extremely unprecedented situation at this point in time. Why do you think high courts are suddenly remembering TN Session today, because you need someone who can really crack the whip, think out of the box, and deal with the situation in the best possible manner today. That unfortunately has been missing, and that is why the Election Commission has not come out smelling of roses in this entire episode.
Well, in fact, far too many people have remembered TN Session and his era. And, you know, if only we had somebody as tough as that to take these hard decisions, Vinay. But because, you know, we were talking about Tamil Nadu, yes, that is correct that the situation is not as dire as many of the other states. But we also have to keep in mind that they also have a very a relatively stronger healthcare infrastructure and a tracking mechanism. Kerala was actually coming off a wave when they went into election mode, and they are back to square one. Tamil Nadu is seeing the bad effects now. And Aarti, in fact, you've pulled out that data as well. Again, from the date of announcement of elections, where testing was abysmally low, Aarti, even in February, the reality only beginning to come out after 6th of April.
Well, Tanvi, to be fair to Tamil Nadu and to pick up on what Mr. T.S. Sudhir was also saying, that it's not as bad as the other states, but that doesn't mean it's not bad either. But there has been, of course, a correspondingly huge spike in the number of cases as the elections have proceeded and campaigning has proceeded. Tamil Nadu, one of the few states which actually has a very high testing rate, which is perhaps, you know, the silver lining in all of this. But nevertheless, the caseload in Tamil Nadu has gone up as the elections have proceeded. So to start off with, you know, even when Tamil Nadu, once the elections were announced in Tamil Nadu on February 26th, there were about 50,000 odd cases in the state. Progressively, as we went along, and you know where we are at right now.
Those are the testing numbers, though, Aarti, that we are looking at. I think that's what's
this is the testing number, of course, as we were saying, has progressively gone up. But the number of cases as on February 26th was 456 in Tamil Nadu, and on the 29th of April, it has been 15,015 cases. So there again has been a huge spike in the number of cases in Tamil Nadu. Perhaps the state is better equipped to deal with it than many others because they have a very robust healthcare system compared to others. But nevertheless, it's almost again like the state of Tamil Nadu woke up one day after the elections got over and they introduced, you know, these new curbs. We've even seen the Tamil Nadu High Court really been extremely scathing of the Election Commission of India. They even said so far as the Election Commission of India perhaps needs to be, officials of the Election Commission of India needs to be booked for murder because of these number of cases that we've gone up. And you can imagine that if this is a state of, you know, a state that is actually doing well, then how bad is it in the other states? But again, the numbers tell you a story in themselves, whereas there's almost been a threefold increase in the number of daily cases in the state of Tamil Nadu.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mugilan's, you know, also joining us right now. Aarti, thanks so much for bringing us those details and those numbers. But Mugilan, fact of the matter is that on ground, the situation hasn't been as bad as some of the other states, but the states moved very quickly post the elections. You know, while the campaigning was on, Mugilan, the scenario was very different, and then you went into kind of a shutdown, and those restrictions have now been extended. So people are having to pay the price for the campaigning.
Definitely, yes. Tamil Nadu, as Aarti has stated, the numbers started picking up from February, even though the rise in February was attributed to people gathering in large number in social gatherings. But March was officially accepted by the Tamil Nadu Health Department also that the election rallies are the main reason for the spike in the number of cases. But now we are seeing the more than 1 lakh active cases that have been reported in Tamil Nadu alone. And as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, yes, the situation is comparatively better than any other states, but still the beds and the medical infrastructure is fast filling. Even this week, the Tamil Nadu state government has to augment another 12,000 beds to accommodate the patients who are coming to the hospital as the numbers continues to spike. As far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, yesterday more than 16,000 cases was reported, and as far as Chennai is concerned, close to 5,000 cases is being reported here in Chennai. As right after the elections got over, we have seen Tamil Nadu state government has imposed several restrictions, and even today the Tamil Nadu state government have extended the restrictions until further order. Earlier, the restrictions come on a monthly basis. That is, every month, the medical expert committee and the Tamil Nadu state government will sit, discuss, assess the situation, and then impose the restrictions. But this time, the Tamil Nadu state government has made it clear that the existing restrictions will continue until further orders. As per the current restrictions are concerned, we already know all the big activities, including the theatres, malls, or big showrooms, has been completely shut. Hotels are being shut, and it's available only for takeaway services. And Sunday we have full lockdown, and night we have night curfews also. That is from 10 p.m. to morning 4 a.m. So yes, definitely yes, it is the people who are paying the price for the for whatever the election commission has did. And as Aarti also pointed out, the Madras High Court this week, we have seen the Madras High Court came down very heavily on the election commission. It even said probably the election commission officials can be booked under murder charges for not stopping the political parties from carrying out the election rallies and violating the guidelines that have been put forth by the election commission. So yes, now whatever it is, now it is the people
Mugilan, very
who are
quickly
paying the
from
price
you,
for
have
what
there
the
been
political
any
party
official
leaders-
appeals, Mugilan, from either Mr. Palaniswamy or Stalin asking their party cadres to rein it in on Sunday? There may be an official curfew or a lockdown, but have the party leaders at least asked the people to stay indoors?
Yes, as far as the counting day is concerned, we already know the Madras High Court has come forward, has pulled up the election commission, and even it threatened the election commission to stop the counting or postpone it to month of July or August if they fail to come up with a proper blueprint for the counting day. And Madras High Court have said that they don't want the counting day to be a catalyst for the COVID case increase. So that is the stand that was taken by the Madras High Court, and it was communicated to the election commission also. And now the Tamil Nadu state government we already know Sunday is the lockdown. Earlier they said that the Sunday lockdown will not be applicable on the voting day. But after the Madras High Court pulling up the election commission, now that the Tamil Nadu state government has announced that the voting day, that is May 2nd, will be a full lockdown, and there will be exemptions only to the political party functionaries, leaders, and the candidates and the election officials. So as for out of the political party leaders and functionaries, there will be total lockdown. There will be no celebrations at any of the party offices.
Well, we'll have to wait and watch,
Usually,
Mugilan.
whenever the election results are out,
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so, and I hope the tough words of the Madras High Court may not have worked too much with the election commission. I hope they work with the people of Karnataka and of Tamil Nadu and the party cadres of those whose results are awaited on Sunday. Thanks, Mugilan. I'm going to ask all of our guests to stay on with us. We will take a very short break. On the other side, we'll get you the numbers from Kerala and Assam. Remember, in Assam, one of their biggest candidates, Himanta Biswa Sarma, BJP leader, turned around and said in an interview during campaigning, there is no COVID here. You don't need to wear a mask. We'll tell you when COVID comes. I'm still awaiting a comment from him to say whether COVID has now come in Assam or not. Stay with us. Welcome back to the special broadcast. We're also keeping you updated on all COVID-related updates that are coming in. The most recent one being that even Bharat Biotech has reduced the prices for vaccines for the state governments now from 600 rupees per dose to 400 rupees. Serum and Sticken is down to 300 rupees per dose. But there aren't any vaccines with any of the state governments right now. So they still have to wait. Vaccine for all may get delayed and not start on 1st of May. What will happen on 2nd of May though is counting for results in 4 states and 1 union territory. Now, in the light of the pandemic and the catastrophe that we are in, yet again, the Election Commission has come out with a new set of norms for the counting day. The Election Commission says that a COVID test report is necessary for any candidate or agent who wants to enter the hall. That no gatherings will be allowed outside the counting venue. Of course, COVID norms have to be followed. That goes without saying. That the outer box of the EVMs and the VVPATs will have to be sanitized. There is a ban on victory rallies. After the cases surged, only 2 people to accompany winning candidates. Vinay, I wanted to come to you on these rules again. We spoke about how the first set of rules were impractical. The second set of rules says that any candidate or agent who wants to be around the counting center needs to have a test report. Now, it takes 4 days to a week to get these tests done in our country right now.
Yeah, I mean, this pretty much is infructuous. I mean, you really, it's pretty much won't be there. You really can't enter a poll. If that's the norm and if it is implemented seriously, you will not have agents entering the polling stations, which is very unusual as well, because these are precisely the kind of things then that create all kinds of other allegations and counter allegations by different political parties.
Which is happening. TMC said then get every central police personnel to get tested.
Yeah, absolutely. So this will obviously become a controversy in any case. So this rule is very difficult to implement. I don't doubt anybody can scramble around and get a test report in time for them to be able to do it. And remember, the name of the agent has to be given in advance. So special passes are made for election agents who are supposed to enter the counting station. So all that name lists and everything has already been given. So it's very difficult for parties to even change that at the last minute. So I really now think this time we'll have a unique situation where counting might happen with virtually no polling agent inside.
I have a very slightly controversial question, and I hope everybody sticks their neck out on this one and tell me what they truly believe. And starting with you, Vinay, do you also believe that there were a few parties and leaders who insisted on going with the narrative that it's all right and it's all under control until the elections were done? Was there a concerted effort to make people believe that the challenge is not as big as it seems right now, or not in our state? I mean, what was Himanta Biswa Sarma saying when he said there isn't any COVID in my state, don't wear a mask?
Without a question. And it's not something that I'm saying. 14 different high courts of this country have said so. The Supreme Court of India has also raised certain issues on that as well. There is absolutely no doubt about it that we pretended things were normal, because at that point of time, campaigning and rallying was more important, and every political party is involved in this. And why am I talking only about the 5 states that are going to the elections in this phase? Please see what is happening, for instance, in Uttar Pradesh. You have a panchayat election that is still on. The last phase has just happened. Panchayat elections are actually local self-governed elections. They are not even, it's not going to bring governance to a halt if you do not have a panchayat. Yes, you can argue that, if you don't have a state government, governance gets halted or it gets disrupted. Certainly the same thing happens for a Lok Sabha election because it's a very important national government. But certainly a panchayat election can be postponed, and panchayat elections are conducted by the state election commissions. But it's not been done. Till the High Court, again, the Allahabad High Court raised the issue basis a newspaper report that 135 people have died. Now you have the Teachers Association in Uttar Pradesh who are deployed for duty, who are saying the numbers is actually 4 times higher than that. Now, irrespective of that, what else is this but hubris and a complete disregard that it is literally like playing with people's lives? Why do you need to do a panchayat election, for God's sake? You don't need to. You can easily postpone it. And I'm absolutely convinced that all political parties pretended that this problem didn't exist because it was I don't have a look. Tanvi, let me put it this way. Let me just take 30 seconds more. I do not have a problem with greed for power that comes with democracy. I have a problem with hurried greed for power. You can't overspeed your way in the middle of a national crisis. This is it's probably the biggest crisis we've had so far. It was an extraordinary time, and it should have meant an extraordinary decision where maybe an all-party meeting should have been called, or a national consensus approach should have been adopted, where everybody agrees, okay, let's give it a halt for a month or so, let situation come back to normal. And then, because it's not just about rally and crowds, it's also that the governance gets distracted. You had chief ministers who were not governing that state. In 5 states, they were all busy trying to do elections.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you also had the Prime Minister and the Home Minister, who are very important
You have the entire cabinet, central cabinet,
and the cabinet campaigning there. It distracts governance. And it's not nobody is saying they did a good job or a bad job, but it certainly means your time is distracted. And this is not the time when the time can get distracted.
Mr. Nigam, why do we still feel the need, to continue with some of these elections? Do you believe now at least they should be stopped in Uttar Pradesh, despite repeated appeals from people who have to be on duty? I mean, today, and when I was talking about, these teachers speaking up, today we had a video of a poll official on duty in Shahjahanpur. And obviously they want to send a message that this lady claimed that she was extremely unwell, still on duty, lying down there on a mattress inside the polling center. This is the level of desperate appeals that are coming from people who are being forced to go on election duty in the middle of the worst pandemic that any state, including Uttar Pradesh, is seeing right now. But we still insist on holding elections, whether it's Telangana, Karnataka or Uttar Pradesh.
Tanvi, let me answer first Uttar Pradesh, because the elections were taking place on the directions of the Allahabad High Court order. I think it is 4th or 5th February, when they said finish it by 30th April. Whereas the State Election Commission wanted to postpone or delay it. They said constitutionally you cannot delay it, and therefore it has been done. It is not the State Election Commission's decision, it is the Allahabad High Court, and it is there available on public domain, that order also. So therefore, to blame the State Election Commission, the Allahabad High Court should have itself considered its own order. The State Election Commission was trying to postpone it till the end of the May. However, because of the changed circumstances, I think Allahabad High Court should have considered it also. But then I think the entire system seems to be so preoccupied, so nobody seems to be paying attention to the elections. And probably the people on the ground also wanted elections to take place also. Otherwise, there would have been a movement on the ground in these states for, telling the political parties to postpone the elections. No, let us be very clear. Election is all about people. There is nothing to laugh about it.
Same people are pleading right now for oxygen.
That is with a benefit of hindsight, whatever we are saying. Yes, the system is overloaded, nobody can deny that. Yes, there are problems, there are mismanagements, nobody can deny that. But the fact remains, what we are talking today is with a benefit of hindsight.
Okay, Vinay, you disagree on the High Court point?
No.
Let me tell you.
1 minute, Mr. Nigam. Yes.
I don't disagree with Mr. Nigam because he's stating a fact.
Yeah.
But I'll just put a counter fact to what he's saying. And what I'm saying is something that has happened. Yeah, I completely agree with him that the State Election Commission of UP was acting on the basis of an Allahabad High Court order which gave a particular cut-off date. That is factually correct. There's nothing wrong. Absolutely right. But the very same UP government, when the Allahabad High Court gave a decision to impose lockdown in 5 districts, took less than 18 hours to move the Supreme Court against it.
Yeah.
What prevented the UP government from moving the Supreme Court and saying, this is an extraordinary problem, please strike this judgment down or give me 1 extra month or 2 months for us to postpone
And
the
again,
elections.
the same thing, that the situation changed from when the Allahabad High Court order was issued to what was happening by March end and first week of April. And under special circumstances, when there is a Disaster Management Act in place, when there is a pandemic across the country, every High Court would have been open to, and willing to relook at that. That was the point, but we've not done that. And now we've got not only people pleading for oxygen in hospital beds, but a state that continues to assert that everything is okay. Data's death counts mismatch, but everything is okay. People every day pleading for oxygen, everything is okay. People waiting for days together to get a test done, but everything is okay. They have to say everything is okay, otherwise how do you justify going out there and asking for votes? That's the basic point. Our politicians at some point, I hope they realize, and it hits them somewhere deep down in their heart, was this fight for power really worth risking these many lives? If you continue to deny any link between the rising cases and the large rallies and how you misled people into believing it was okay and that things will be under control, then you are doing yourself and this nation a great disservice. I'm going to request all of our guests to continue with us. We're going to get you all top story to COVID here right now. We will also tell you what pollsters are predicting as far as the election results is concerned. Stay with me. On the other side, we get you the exit poll numbers.